Okay, this is confidence intervals, proportions, part 3. So we've actually finished going through how to find the confidence interval for a proportion. Now this is kind of putting it all together, all the different types of confidence intervals, and how to know which one to choose. So first you need to figure out, if they tell you to find a confidence interval, you need to decide what parameter are you estimating. Are you estimating a mean, or are you estimating a proportion? So if you are estimating a mean, the next question you ask yourself is, do you know sigma? Remember, sigma is population standard deviation. Or do you not know sigma? Sigma is unknown. You don't know the population standard deviation, but you do know the S, the sample standard deviation, or at the very least have access to it if they give you raw data. So if you know population standard deviation, you will do a Z interval. That's that's stat, go over to test, choose number 7, Z interval. If you would prefer to use the formula, it's X bar plus or minus Z critical value times sigma over the square root of N. Okay. If you don't know population standard deviation, but you do know the sample standard deviation, you're going to use T interval, which is number 8 when you hit stat tests. Then you go down to number 8, T interval. Or if you want to use the formula, it's X bar plus or minus T alpha over 2, or the T critical value. This is where you get this by using INVT or the T table, times S over square root of N. Now those are the two types of intervals that you would use if you were estimating a population mean. If you're estimating a population proportion, then you're just going to use one prop Z interval. One prop Z int is what it will say in the calculator. For most of you, that choice is stat tests A. If you would rather do the formula, it's P hat plus or minus Z critical value times the square root of P hat times Q hat over N. Now, just to recall, P hat is X over N. And just in case you need to know it, Q hat is 1 minus P hat. But this is the basic flowchart that you can use to help you to figure out which type of confidence interval, which formula, or which calculator function you need to use. So again, if it's population mean and you know the population standard deviation, it's a Z interval, number 7. If you don't know population standard deviation but you know the sample standard deviation, it's T interval. Or if you are estimating a population proportion, it's one prop Z interval. Okay, so I also have a flowchart for sample size, because you might recall there's 3 different formulas for that. So if you're calculating a sample size, what are you calculating the sample size for? Is it for estimating a confidence interval for a mean or a proportion? So sample size needed for constructing a confidence interval for a population mean or for a population proportion. Alright, now if it is a mean, there's only one formula. It's N equals critical value times population standard deviation times sigma divided by M, margin of error. So M is margin of error, just in case you forgot. Now, once you do this, you want to round up to the next whole number. If you are constructing a confidence interval for a proportion and you need to figure out what sample size is needed, there's 2 different formulas. This first formula we use if P hat is known. It's P hat times Q hat times Z over the margin of error squared. If P hat is not known, it's 0.25 times Z over margin of error squared. That's if P hat is unknown. And definitely for both of these, for both of these, you want to round up. to the next whole number. Make sure you round up to the next whole number. And that's all. That's all there is for confidence intervals. So if you have questions, please let me know.